Hey there, Brad from 4Player Network. These are my 10 favorite games of 2019, and fuck all y'all who thought this was a bad year. Y'all about to learn something. First up at number 10 is Judgment, aka Judge Eyes, aka that Yakuza spinoff where you play as a disgraced lawyer turned private investigator. And I almost didn't want to put it on the list because it is a lot like a Yakuza game, and a lot of the reasons the game is good is a lot of the same reasons that a Yakuza game is great. The story, the writing, the characters, those relationships, the world, the atmosphere, exploring the city of Kamurocho, and it is still Kamurocho. And you know, if you've played a Yakuza game, a lot of this is going to be really familiar to you. But the reason I think I stayed on my list at number 10 is because of the things that make this game unique. The things that make it not just your normal Yakuza game are pretty strong. Yagami is, you know, this disgraced lawyer turned private detective, and you know what? He's a lot different than protagonists you usually play in Yakuza games, especially Kiryu. You're used to playing as a lovable doofus who is basically running around doing errands for bad people, and in this game you play as a dude with a good head on his shoulders. You know, he's often the smartest guy in the room. He's kind of driving the story forward, investigating this mystery, and that change of pace just feels a lot different for a Yakuza game. You do a lot of stuff that, you know, you don't do in Yakuza games, like tail people and take pictures and put on disguises and break into places via lockpicking and stuff. You know, you kind of feel like an investigator. You know, not all those mechanics are the best. It does get a little repetitive, but I don't know. You know, the combat in this game, which there is still combat, I mean, this dude can throw down, is probably the best feeling combat this series has had to date. It just flows really well. You're hopping over dudes, you're hopping off walls. It's all kind of seamless and smooth, and you know, it's shallow, it's repetitive like any Yakuza game, but you know, they're finally figuring it out. It's just funny that the next one's going to be turn-based, but you know, the story of this game is different. You know, usually in Yakuza games, you're knee deep in hierarchy and titles and patriarchs and a lot of internal politics and conflicts. And honestly, it can be kind of hard just to keep all the Yakuza stuff, you know, organized in your head. It's kind of nuts. It's kind of a lot. But this game, you know, it's a different kind of story. It's a mystery. It's very mystery driven, and you know, while the Yakuza is still involved, it's not to the same extent as in the other games. You're mostly investigating this corrupt pharmaceutical company, and you know, then the government gets involved. It's different, and that's nice. I kind of like that. But you know, it's a Yakuza game through and through. If you know, a lot of people ask, like, what's the best starting entry for the series, and a lot of people will tell them Yakuza 0, but then they play Yakuza 0, they say I liked it, and then they find out they have 10 other fucking games to play. This is a good way to find out what's really great about the series without committing to the giant franchise. You know, it's a one and done sort of thing. So, I don't know, pick up Judgment, hop into it. It's probably too long. You know, for a side game, I kind of wish it was maybe half the length. But, you know, it's still a really good time. The side missions are still as funny as ever. The side activities you can do are still great. There's like a full-on dating system in this game. You can have girlfriends and like text with them back and forth and go on dates and, you know, develop your it's fun. I don't know. Judgment, it's good. It's good. It's my number 10.
That's the best funeral we can give him.
Next up, we have Wargroove. Man. This is similar to, I think, a couple other games on this list where I had a lot of expectations going in because this is a follow-up, a spiritual follow-up to a series that is long gone and a series I love, and that is Advance Wars. This is a very faithful, loving reimagining of the Advance Wars series, and, you know, for the most part, and, you know, more than for the most part, this game really, really nails it. If you're an Advance Wars fan, you need to be playing Wargroove. Man, it even has like that spark, that personality. All the CEOs in this game, or whatever they call them, the generals or whatever, are all really cool and really unique, and maybe even more so in this game, because in most Advance Wars games, they're just sort of powers to pull out on the battlefield, and that's what makes them different. And maybe some stat differences in the troops, but in this game, they're they're down on the battlefield with the rest of your soldiers, and kind of gives it a different feel, because the fail state isn't just, you know, your base getting taken over, but also your CO dying. If your CO dies, you know, you lose the match, and it kind of adds a layer of intensity to the battles, because while they're your most powerful unit, you have to be very careful, because one bad move means, you know, you're starting that whole battle over. Well, not anymore, because they introduced a save system. It's kind of funny talking about this game, because a lot of people picked it up when it first came out, and it was really difficult. And its difficulty is one of the reasons I really enjoy this game. I've played all the Advance Wars games, all the Advance Wars games released in the West, and I love them to death. And, you know, this started to feel really familiar, and if it wasn't as challenging as it was, I probably would have gotten bored. But this game really sort of pushed me. They eventually added a huge patch which introduced mid-map saves and difficulty levels, so I do encourage anyone who maybe put it down because it was too hard, and it was hard to pick it back up again, because it's just, you know, it's a lot friendlier now. But man, it's honestly, it's as good as Advance Wars. It really is. Except now it has this like awesome multiplayer mode and this map creation, which they dabbled in Advance Wars, but it really feels like fully fleshed out in Wargroove. It has asynchronous. Asynchronous, is that the word? Not asynchronous, asynchronous multiplayer, where you can take a turn and send it to a friend, and they could take their turn when they get around to it, but you can have multiple games going at the same time. So, you know, if you have enough games going with people, you always kind of have turns to take. It's all like Words with Friends or whatever. And man, that's just a perfect way to play this type of strategy game. And, you know, the map creation as a full campaign creation even is it's just ridiculous. This really is such a fully featured, fully realized follow-up to Advance Wars, and it's kind of beautiful. If there's anything maybe flaw that I would have, you know, levy at this game, it's probably some of the same flaws that Advance Wars had in the past, where towards the end of the game you started to get into, you know, maps that were just enormous, where you're leading multiple fronts at the same time, or maps with so much naval. Like, if you hated the Navy stuff in Advance Wars, you're gonna hate it here. It's very similar, but you know, unique in its own little ways. Wargroove, just a really great game for Advance Wars fans. You know, it's hard to believe that they nailed it as much as they did, but man, you could tell they're fans of Advance Wars, and they made a really, really great game because of it. Next up on my list is the remake for Resident Evil 2. And what a game. But, you know, I got to be honest with you. I do write down a few notes before I sit down to record these things. And when I got to Resident Evil 2, I didn't have that much to write down, and it made me wonder, like, do I really like this game as much as I do? I have so few notes. But, you know, it's because there's not a lot to say. It's just a really well-made, well-realized version of Resident Evil 2, which is a Resident Evil that I love. It's one of my favorite classic Resident Evils. And this is sort of that turned into, you know, a third-person over-the-shoulder version of that, with the one exception, which I'll get to in a second, because it's the next thing on my notes and there's not a lot to it. This is Resident Evil 2 with a great horror atmosphere that maybe the original didn't even have. And Mr. X, that's the thing that you write down in your notes, because that's the big unique thing about this game, and it's probably the most memorable thing, the thing that made Resident Evil 2 so great. Mr. X is a character that was in the original Resident Evil 2, but definitely not in the same way, and only in the B campaign. In this game, he's like a persistent presence that's always there in the police station after a certain point in the game. And it's just something you have to deal with. It's horrifying. You hear his footsteps. You hear him opening doors. You never know where he is. And it's fucking scary. And you kind of you spend a lot of time when you first play this remake just kind of, hiding in safe rooms, waiting for the footsteps to die down. And then you realize he never really goes away. He's always there. And that realization that you just kind of have to, man up and just deal with it. You're going to have to play a classic Resident Evil game where you're roaming around, exploring rooms, looking for keys, unlocking doors and getting into new parts of the police station, but he's just going to be there. And it changes the pace. It changes the way you play the game. And it really is the shining star, the bright gold star for this Resident Evil 2 remake. If it wasn't for that, honestly, I probably think this game is well made, but a little underwhelming. Except it has a great map. Man, what a great map system. Beyond that, I don't know. It's good. It's scary. The lickers were fucking frightening in this one. So it's classic Resident Evil. It's scary. It's Mr. X. I'm looking. That's all that's in my notes. It's a great fucking game. I don't know what to tell you. I love Resident Evil. I love this style of Resident Evil. And, man, I can't wait for Resident Evil 3. It's going to be great. Next up on my list is Disco Elysium. A game that I probably didn't even know existed at the beginning of the year, but there was a lot of buzz right before it came out, and I'm so glad I picked it up because, wow, it's not what I expected. I expected a classic RPG, but unlike most classic RPGs, there's no combat system in this game. You might get into like a few physical altercations, if you will, but like everything else in the game, it all takes place within its dialogue system. And wow, the dialogue system is, and I know that might sound boring, and it is a lot of reading. At first, I was a little iffy about it, but this is such an impressively written game. It's not just the quality of the writing, it's the audacity of some of the dialogue choices you have, the responses to those dialogue choices, and also like the big hook of the game, which is that you're playing a character who is not in a great place, but like the skill system, like there's like 24 parts of his psyche, if you will, that chime in on conversations, that try to influence your decisions, that get into arguments with each other, like your logic or your composure or your empathy, and they all might be vying for your attention and trying to influence the choice you're going to make, often getting in arguments with you, arguments with each other, and it's just such a crazy presentation of a character, and those individual skills really do feel like fleshed out characters, and you're constantly being surprised, you're constantly laughing. This is one of the funniest games I played this year, just because it really encourages you to take like really crazy choices, and your necktie, which by the way, if your Inland Empire skill is high enough, is going to be chiming in a lot, just telling you to do and say crazy things. And you often do that, and you often fail at your basic objective of being a shitty detective. But you know what? That's okay, because failure is a part of the game, and failure is something that feels appropriate to the character, and it leads to funny results. And it's such a well put together game. The atmosphere of the world and these characters and the music cues. It's, my God, I can't say enough good stuff about Disco Elysium. You just have to play it or read it or whatever you want to call it. I almost wish there was a handheld version. Like I wish I could play this on an iPad so I can lay in bed and play it like I'm reading a good book. But that's not something I would say about most games. But here, the quality of the writing and the story is so good that it would be perfect for that. It's just, everyone should try Disco Elysium. I promise you will constantly be surprised. It's so good. Next up on my list is Fire Emblem Three Houses, and wow, I kind of have a lot to say about this one. Probably because I have a long history and a lot of baggage with the series. Fire Emblem is a series I used to really love, but I kind of fell out of love with after Awakening came out and then Fates. I feel like they kept trying to do things, experiment with ideas that weren't fully fleshed out or didn't really seem very cohesive. You know, a lot of the stuff from Fire Emblem Awakening, where people were choosing their waifus and marrying everybody off, and everyone was having kids, and those kids came from the future, and you were even marrying those kids because you could do that sort of fucked up stuff. And then Fates came out and had all the multiple storylines and had like some slight base building, but none of it seemed all that good. And then they had the partner system, but it was all like kind of needlessly convoluted. Look, I'm really surprised by Fire Emblem Three Houses. It's one of my biggest surprises of the year, and probably my most improved sequel award would go to this game, because I was not expecting to enjoy this as much as I did. I think the reason this one is successful is it finally feels like a culmination of all these ideas. They finally feel like really kind of fleshed out, but also they make sense finally. I think because the sort of the framing structure or the framing premise for this game is everything takes place in a school, and your main character is a teacher, and you have a class of students, and those are your starting soldiers. So everything around like the meta systems of the game, the RPG elements, if you will, ties so neatly into this idea of it being a school. Like they level up, they learn new classes because you're actually teaching them. The skills that they focus on and level up even outside of battle are the ones you tell them to focus on, and you really feel like a teacher. And because of that, you're attached not only to your students but to through supports, through activities that you do with them, like eating with them and stuff, and cooking with them, but you feel attached to like the characters they're becoming in battle because of you know the way they're growing as related to you know you teaching them as students. Like your characters will be able to become like you know like cavaliers and Pegasus knights because you actually teach them how to like fly and ride horses and stuff, and it just everything ties together in such a nice neat bow. Like there's even an event that happens during the school year where there's like a big ball and there's like a dancing competition, and whoever wins that, a student you select will actually become the dancer class. It's such a smart way of wrapping mechanics into story, and I think it's finally all these disparate ideas that they had before, you know, that they fill one. But the stuff in combat has been improved, I think, pretty greatly as well. One of the biggest improvements is you can now see when you sort of move one of your characters into the enemy area who each enemy unit is going to attack, and what that allows you to do is kind of push forward more aggressively without inching your general, like your heavy tank character, forward. That's how we used to play Fire Emblem, right? You move your character with your highest defense, one square into enemy range, let people move forward, and then kind of attack them. But now you can move everybody forward because you know who's going to be attacked by who, and you can kind of plan around that. It really speeds up the pace of battle, even battles where it seems like there's endless enemies. It's just a lot more fun. The improvements to the magic system make magic so much better and more fun to use, because before you would get powerful magic spells, but they would be in staves, and you would kind of hoard that stuff until the end of the game and end up maybe never using it. But now, you know, it everything has like charges that refill after battles, so you can kind of use magic as much as you want, and that's a lot better. And then the skills and arts and all those abilities and stuff, all that seems a lot deeper. You know, flying units and mounted units can dismount. There's just a lot of smart changes to make combat faster and more strategic, and I think just better than it has been in a while. And I was a little down on the map design, because I think modern Fire Emblem games, their map design's a lot weaker. But once I started to get into the paralogs, you start to see like fresher ideas, and that stuff I think started to become a lot better. I think in general it's just the game is just way better in battle, and like so much better outside of battle. You know, this finally feels like an RPG, when before it always felt like a strategy game with some light RPG elements. Now it just seems like a whole complete package, and it's probably one of the best Fire Emblem games to date now. I think going forward, I mean, if I have any like issues with the game, it's that I think in battle, like when you're not in a fight, it looks great, right? But outside of a fight, when you're kind of staring at the map, it looks kind of muddy and unreadable, and they have to use a lot of UI and icons and stuff to help kind of parse it out, and that's because it's a full 3D zoom out, right? And they kind of zoom in seamlessly, but when it's zoomed out, it's just hard to tell what's going on, as opposed to older Fire Emblem games where everything was bright and like very readable, right? You could look at the silhouette of an enemy and immediately know what it is and what it can do. Now it's a lot less readable, and I feel like they finally outside of battle they've been taking a lot of steps forward into making it feel like a more modern game. I think their next step is in battle. I think it's time to maybe chunk this battle system completely and go for something that feels a lot more modern, like Valkyria Chronicles or something to that effect. I think, or I mean, look at what they did with Codename Steam. I think that was a really big step forward for intelligence systems in terms of combat system. I'm very impressed by this Fire Emblem game, and I can't wait to see the future of Fire Emblem, and that is not something I could have said about the past few Fire Emblem games. So I'm impressed. I know I've been talking a lot about this game, but yeah, it's great. Pick it up. Next up is Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, and man, I got a lot of crap earlier in this year prior to this game coming up because I was down on it. I did not think it was going to be very good. People were giving me shit for that. I was like, but I watched all this footage and I played all these demos and it was a bit of a mess, and it's not going to be as great as the other Igavanias, much less Symphony of the Night. And you know what? I was kind of wrong, and I was happy to be wrong because, man, they pulled it off. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is a great fucking Igavania game. It surpassed all of my expectations. I did not think that this game was gonna have as much, if not and more, than the stuff that they had in other Igavanias. The shard system in this game. I knew they were going to be doing the shard system because, like I said, in the demos and stuff. And I love the soul system from Aria of Sorrow, from Dawn of Sorrow, and anything sort of like it, like an Order of Ecclesia. And I knew that was going to be coming back. I knew all the enemies were going to have abilities that you could steal from them, that you could grind out and would become more powerful. But in the demos, they didn't really show any of the wilder shards, any of the wilder spells that you could get in this game. And let me tell you, there's some weird, crazy spells. One of the reasons that I think Bloodstained is so good is just because how weird it is. Because Symphony of the Night had a lot of weird shit in it. Other Igavanias had weird, quirky stuff, that you would not see in like a very more serious, straight-laced, polished game like Metroid. Castlevania was all about, after Symphony of the Night, was all about kind of the wackier shit, and it's all in here. One of my favorite abilities in this game is Summon Chair. You literally would summon a chair, Miriam would sit in it, and she would regain her MP. And as you leveled that spell up, you would get new chairs, and you never knew what chair you were gonna get, and eventually you're like summoning thrones and stuff, and you could refill your MP so fast that you'd be doing it in boss battles and shit, and that's just crazy. Could you think of another game that would have something that kooky? But that's the kind of cool stuff, the transformations into bunny ninjas that were really powerful if you leveled them up all the way. That's the cool shit. That's the magical shit that makes Bloodstained so fucking cool. Man, I thought this was going to be a train wreck. I thought it was going to be like a mighty number 9. I was so wrong. I'm so happy to be wrong. There's secrets, side stuff in this game. Little areas that you would... I mean, I don't know what to say. I'm elated. Like, Bloodstained is the most addictive game I played this year. And not the most addictive, just the most addictive. But the one I sat down when I started, I played 50 hours of that game. And I didn't take long breaks in between, even though my current life leads to, me putting games down for a long period of time. But when I played this game, I was hooked on it until I was done. And I milked every ounce out of this game. And there's so much to do. 50 hours on a goddamn Igavania, and I didn't even break a sweat. You have to play this game. People were really hyped on this game when it first came out, but then they announced that Switch port, or they released that Switch port, and it was a fucking mess. And people were bummed out because they wanted to play Igavania games on their Switch, which makes sense, because a lot of us come from, playing his games on handhelds, and it was a mess. And I think it really hurt the love that was being thrown at this game. I think they finally fixed that Switch port, but you know what? Just getting on PC. Don't skip this game. It really is that fun and addictive and crazy. It is honestly up there with some of the best Igavanias. You know, it's maybe not the prettiest. You know, I miss some of the. You know, I have a lot of nostalgia for the Castlevania series, and it is still like an imitation of that. But man, it really is one of Iga's best games. Despite that, you gotta play it. Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night. You know what? That other game that they did, sort of the 8-bit throwback one, Curse of the Moon. That one's awesome too. So play that one if you didn't. Anyways. Let me tell you about Superland. I don't know when you're going to get this video, but I assure you that a few of the other people who are making videos are also going to have this game on their list, which might be surprising because a lot of you maybe have never heard of it. It does have a strange name, it does have a strange visual style, but I assure you, give this game a chance. It is that good. I don't want to oversell it. I don't want to say, hey, it's Metroid Prime meets Portal, but it's Metroid Prime meets Portal. Okay, not really, but it is an open world Metroid style exploration game with a heavy emphasis on puzzle solving, and you get a lot of unique abilities and upgrades to your character that both help with the exploration of it. Like, you get a lot of cool movement abilities that let you see and explore the world in like new and interesting ways, but those same abilities tied to like really clever styles of puzzle solving, and the puzzle solving is legitimately challenging. There are some areas in the game, like you'll go into a town, and it's almost like an adventure game style puzzle where every piece of the person in the town is like a player and figuring out and unraveling this large puzzle. And you get stuff like that, and then there's stuff like just simple block puzzles that are legitimate head scratchers. It's just such a good puzzle game. But I think my favorite part is exploring this world because you get a lot of really cool abilities. Like at one point you get this magnet belt, right? And this magnet belt lets you attach to and climb up any like metal surface in the game. But you want, when in this game you play like this little miniature character in like a sandbox style world, you didn't really see metal pieces as something you could interact with. You know, it wasn't like a climbable wall that is so obviously something you're going to climb later, right? Or a red door that you're so obviously going to go through like in a Metroid game. This is just big giant like screwdriver in the world that you didn't even pay attention to, and now all of a sudden you can climb up it with your magnet belt, and you're seeing the world differently, right? It's already this densely packed world, and now you're finding new ways to explore it. And the verticality in this world, I feel like I was always like using my abilities, like my triple jumps and my ability to, you know, shoot the thing and like teleport to it, and like cool ways to get to places that I feel like I really should not have been. But then you get up there and there's like a fucking chest or something or some coins, and you're like, man, the developer did know I can get up here. And you feel like your sequence breaking constantly, and I think you actually are sequence breaking, but the game rewards you for it, and it feels so well handcrafted. It's one of the best worlds in any game this year. And you know, you probably wouldn't think it by looking at it, but I'm telling you, this is like a 30-hour meaty puzzle exploration game. There is some combat, and the combat is fine. It's not great, but you do get a lot of interesting abilities to help deal with combat, and a lot of your permanent upgrades that you find in these chests are in the service of like making you stronger and making combat a more elaborate. And you know, it might not seem important at first, but there is like this crazy wave-based combat challenge secret at the end of the game, or you can unlock it early in the game, but it's like impossible. And I was so thorough in exploring this game. By the end of it, I still couldn't beat that combat challenge. So it's cool that there's like this ultimate secret tied behind combat that links to all these upgrades that, man, I still haven't been able to tackle. But I don't know, it feels great. You know, they're making a sequel to this game, and the developer's already a little worried about, you know, whether they should put combat in and whatnot. But man, I think you should keep it in, make it deeper, maybe make the enemies more interesting to interact with, because that's probably the only flaw in what is, I think, a truly great game. Man, everyone should play this. If you like stuff like Portal, the Talos Principle, The Witness, you got to try Superland. It's that cool. Next up, Fail Seal Arbiter's Mark. And don't skip ahead. Stop. I know you're already scanning ahead to see the next one on the list. Listen to me. This one, a little bit of a sore spot for me because I feel like I've been begging people all year long to give this a shot, to trust me. You know, I feel like I have a lot of more out there games on my list this year. But I feel like I've also been able to get a lot of people to try those games. Have not had the luck, as much luck with Fail Seal, and god damn it, it pisses me off. And I know you're all just being graphics whores. You're looking at the graphics and you're going, I don't think I want to play this. You know, Carlos has been calling it Habbo Hotel. But listen to me, motherfuckers. You gotta trust me. Final Fantasy Tactics is my favorite game of all time. As soon as I played that, strategy RPGs became like my favorite genre. But I've also been very critical. I've been playing so many strategy RPGs since 1997 when I first played Final Fantasy Tactics, and I don't think any of them have come, you know, have bested the king. Final Fantasy Tactics is still the king. Well, Fail Seal Arbiter's Mark is an indie-developed spiritual successor of sorts. Let's say it shares a lot of spiritual DNA. This game wouldn't exist without Final Fantasy Tactics because it is so lovingly, faithfully crafted as an homage to Final Fantasy Tactics in all of the important ways. And let me tell you, when I say a game is a Brad game, that means it's got a lot of deep, crunchy RPG systems. You know, if you're like me, if you can spend, you know, half an hour and a menu tweaking, customizing, testing stuff, looking at things, you're like me. And I'm telling you, Fail Seal Arbiter's Mark is for you. This game is such a deep strategy RPG, just like Final Fantasy Tactics. It's got the crazy deep, you know, job class system with active abilities and reaction abilities and movement abilities, and it has a subclass system just like Final Fantasy Tactics. But honestly, a lot of the stuff that was a neat idea in Final Fantasy Tactics that you know was a little unbalanced. You know, think about like status effects in Final Fantasy Tactics, or you know, some classes that seemed like really good on paper, but were just kind of terrible. Think about like Rafa and Malik. You know, they were just crap, right? I feel like this game takes a lot of the things that Final Fantasy Tactics did, but it also takes a lot of the stuff that Final Fantasy Tactics failed at mechanically and like rebalances it and makes it useful, right? So now all of a sudden, like the item system in this game is like super creative because you level up your items and they get stronger, but they don't deplete. They have charges that refill at the end of battle. So now you're constantly using items in battle. It just becomes part of your repertoire. You know, status effects are like not only useful, but I feel like they're essential in being successful in this game. They made them really good. Like the equipment system feels balanced and complex, and every weapon type, of which there are like, you know, 24 or whatever, feel fucking useful and appropriate for like the classes. And honestly, you thought me talking about Fire Emblem is long? If I start getting into the nitty gritty of this game, I could speak on this game for 10 minutes. So you better fucking stop me. Well, I guess you can't stop me. So let me keep going. I'm telling you, in battle, let's get out of the menu. In battle, this game understands a lot of strategy RPGs don't, but like map design is really important to like the tactics in this type of game, and it has a lot of the verticality, environmental interactions, like places, you know, go in one area and you'll pop out another, or you know, like water and like interesting stuff with water and switches, and it has the complex map layouts of like a Final Fantasy Tactics, the kind of thing that like a Fire Emblem doesn't have, or a you know, I don't want to talk shit about any other strategy RPGs, but let me just say, Fail Seal gets it. It has maps with like gimmicks and stuff. It's really, really fucking good. One of my favorite parts of this game is how dangerous the enemies are. You know, I feel like my allies were constantly dying just because of how deadly an enemy was, and it feels like Dark Souls in a way, where you can't underestimate any enemy because they feel as strong as you, right? And that was never something that I felt in Final Fantasy Tactics. I always felt way more powerful in the enemy, but the enemy in this game is kitted out with as good or better gear than I am at all levels of difficulty. And One of the other secret sauces of this game is how the difficulty system in this game is so good. There's a difficulty menu that has like options upon options and upon options to tweak your experience. And I feel like a veteran of this type of game, and I was able to like turn up the difficulty some, but man, I was getting my ass kicked, and I fucking loved it because it really pushes you to make those really broken class combos, the stuff that made famous in Final Fantasy Tactics. But then when you get your ass handed to you by the same combo that the enemy does, it just feels fucking wonderful. Like when an enemy's teleporting you and dropping you into like water that you can't swim in, and you just die instantly. It's just fucking great. But even on the surface, a lot of people ask me, well, how's the story? And the story's fine, but I will say, at least it gets some of the magic that made Final Fantasy Tactics like memorable, and the presentation and the interactions. In Final Fantasy Tactics, like when a character would like pull a zodiac stone out of its pocket, you hear like a little pocket sound, or when someone grabs someone by the collar, you hear like a clinch sound or whatever, right? It's those little details that Final Fantasy Tactics made Final Fantasy Tactics great, and Failsail might not achieve that level of greatness in the details, but it has them in there. It tries that stuff. It understands that that stuff was important to the presentation of Final Fantasy Tactics, and I respect it so much more for that. It feels like the developer of this game is the kind of fan that I am for Final Fantasy Tactics. I bet it's their favorite game of all time, and man, that's great. Side quests, secrets, like secrets on maps that lead to like secret side quests. It's all here, man. I gotta stop. I gotta fucking stop. The music slaps, by the way. The music slaps, but I gotta stop. I've been talking way too long about this game. It's fucking great. And I know a lot of you still aren't gonna listen to me, and I already hate you for it, but for the few of you that trust me on this one, this game is so fucking good. Holy shit, 7 minutes. Whatever. On to the next game. Next up on my list is Slay the Spire. No surprise here. My most played game in 2019, kind of by a lot, is Slay the Spire. And I don't really play roguelikes, and I don't really play them for this long, but oh man, I have discovered a world that I never thought I liked of deck builders, and it is glorious. I kind of always look down on deck builders. I really like Magic the Gathering and that kind of game, but a deck builder is different. You don't go in with a deck already made that you've spent countless hours refining and trying to find the perfect strategy to revolve your game around. Deck builders are the kind of game where you build your deck as you go, and it's always going to be different every time you play, and it's always about how different it's going to be, and kind of adapting to the choices you have as you go, much like a roguelike. And man, Slay the Spire is just so good. It's so good. It's you have all these different classes now with the Watcher, and they all play so differently. They all have different decks. They all have different cards. And I thought when I first started the game that the differences were going to be superficial, but no. Like the way the Ironclad plays versus the Defect versus like the Watcher are so fucking different. It's like you're playing different games, even though you're fighting the same enemies, you're fighting the same bosses, but it's so different in the way you play the game because of it. And just hats off to the developer for coming up with really unique ideas for classes. And everything about this game, I thought this game looked really dumb at first. I didn't really like the art, the big goofy arrows, but it grows on you, man. I love all the weird, wacky enemy designs and character designs. It really is some unique shit that you're not going to see in other games. And I really love the music. This is one of the best soundtracks of the year. If you like really good battle themes and boss themes, it's atmospheric as fuck, and it's challenging. My God, this game is challenging. I've been working on, like, all year long, I've been trying to get to Ascension 20. And, there are times I kind of put down the game and I sort of had to start over when the Switch version came out. But it is a game that is consistently kicking my ass, and I love it for that. Because every time I die and I restart, I'm getting a fresh new experience. And there's nothing better than the feeling of when a really good deck is starting to come together, especially when you first started. you didn't think it was going to come together. Then all of a sudden you get a couple of cards and it starts gelling well. And man, this is one of the most addictive games I played this year, obviously. But it's so well designed and well balanced that I always kept coming back for more. Highly recommend trying Slay the Spire, even if you don't like roguelike, just because it is such a well made like RPG combat card game. It's got such a great battle system, such great characters, such great enemy designs, boss designs that punish you for relying on cheap archetypes. It's Slay the Spire. It's fucking great. People who've played it know that it's great, and I'm preaching to the choir. People who have not played it, try it. It's so good. My favorite game of 2019, and the winner of a lot of the awards that we gave out this year, is Outer Wilds. And you know what? I don't even have to speak. You could just look at this for the next 5-6 minutes, however long this is going to take, and you'll understand. And that's what I understood when I first saw a trailer for Outer Wilds, honestly. I knew that this was so my shit. We've talked about the premise of this game, right? It's like Groundhog Day. Every 22 minutes, the sun goes supernova, and then you die, and the loop restarts. You're back in the same place. And it's a mystery. It's an exploration game. You explore this solar system, and your goal is to find out what the fuck is going on. Why is the sun going supernova? Is there a way to stop it? Is there a way to escape? Let's go to all these interesting planets and find out. And you know what? If this game was just like frozen in time, right? That's funny, considering that time is such a big part of the game. But I mean, if the worlds, the planets that you explore didn't move, this would be one of the most impressive, like, worlds, maps, whatever you want to call it, I've ever explored in a game. But the true magic of Outer Wilds is that it's this galaxy that's constantly in rapid motion. You spend 22 minutes exploring as much of the galaxy, or the solar system, as you can, but it's constantly changing. Each one of these little planets, which is so different, so distinct, filled with so many mysteries and secrets, they're constantly evolving over the course of this 22 minutes. There's this one place you go to that has two planetoids that are revolving around each other, and one is filled with sand and is dumping sand into the other planetoid, right? And over this 22 minutes, you can explore and uncover mysteries in one planet as it fills up with sand, or the other planet as it dumps out with sand, and you have to figure that out. This game is all about obtaining knowledge. You don't pick things up. There's no inventory, right? You're not leveling up. You're not learning new mechanics, but you're learning how this world, how these worlds, how this solar system functions and how it moves, and you're uncovering the secrets within. A big part of it, and the reason that this is my favorite story of the year, is that you have this translator, and you're uncovering notes and observations and basically the scientific studies of a race of people who were in the solar system before you. They're the ones who created all this like crazy technology. They're trying to figure out where is the eye of the universe, right? And your people, they're just kind of like explorers. Like they like to explore. It's similar to like hiking or camping, and you often find a lot of your people just sort of camping out on these crazy places. It seems so daunting at first, right? When you first start exploring this solar system, but then when you see your bros, they're like, "Hey, what's up, fool?" And they're just chilling by a campfire on one of these planets as they're falling apart. All of a sudden you start looking at the solar system differently. You become a lot more comfortable with the fact that you're going to be dying constantly, because that's the sort of game it is. It's this thing that feels like mystical and magical, but at the same time it's really sad. It's sad to find out what was going on about the Nomai, this race of people who were trying to accomplish a goal. You find out, I don't want to spoil anything here. In fact, I don't even like talking about this game. I don't even like showing footage of this game, because everything is knowledge. Everything is the story. Everything you uncover as you explore it on your own. Like, this game doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't tell you where to go. You can go where you want to go, whenever you want to go, and you'll learn things that inform, how things work in other places in the solar system. And it's It's just so good. It's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful world. It's just one of the most impressive, like, Jesus, I'm going to say it, video games I've ever played in my goddamn life. Everyone's got to play Outer Wilds. Now, I will say, it's a game that requires an intense amount of focus and attention and effort and persistence. You know, this game doesn't hold your hand. Like I said, you're going to have to uncover the mysteries of this solar system, of this universe on your own. But I promise you it's worth it. The payoff is wonderful, and it'll be an experience you will never forget. I love this game. Anyways, that's going to do it for my favorite games of 2019, and this is cause for celebration because you're not getting these videos till February, which means we had plenty of time to play all these games. We did it. We beat Chris Davis. We're officially the Oscars. Hopefully, in the future, it'll be February again, maybe even March. Anyways, look for my top 10 Jimmys video. Hopefully that'll be coming soon if I'm not too busy to do that, but it should be a good one. Peace out.